I went out and shot the Panasonic GH5S in tandem with the GH5 Mark II. What you see in here is the GH5 Mark II shot taken in Cine D2 photo style at f5.6 ISO 200. I think this is a good rendition of color for the scene as I saw it in front of my eyes, and I've corrected the hue of Cine D2 with my personal calibration. As far as I can see, the scene is well balanced, and I can see a tiny little bit of blue in the clouds, as you would expect in a scene like this, and perhaps the grass is a bit too bright, but that's down to personal taste. This is the same scene with the GH5S, which was sitting on another tripod side by side. Due to the ISO 400, the scene had to be exposed at f8. However, I found later on during the correction process that the scene was actually a bit underexposed, so I had to pull the highlights a little to maximize dynamic range. Although I can clearly see that the clouds in the sky still retain some tone, overall they are more greyish, and this is to be expected a bit with Vlog. Doesn't really retain color in the highlights, while the colors in the shadows and in the midtones are correct after I had to eliminate and reduce the over-saturation of the red channel, which will be apparent on the roof. Overall, even after correction, the footage does look different. This is another scene that is much harder to expose than it seems initially, because you have the bright sky in the background while the patio is really in the shade. So whilst I was spot metering on the faces, I need to make sure that I wasn't clipping the sky. The GH5 in Cine D2 did an okay job with that. And as you can see, if you look on the top, on that rectangle that just comes on the screen, you can really see a tiny little bit of cloud still left. Obviously, if you had exposed on the clouds, the faces would have been completely dark. So, as our subject are the people, this was the right approach. But it just shows you the limitation of dynamic range in such a small sensor. This is the GH5S in the same settings. As you can see, with ISO 400, it can take after 2.8 of light. So Vlog allows you to really push up that exposure. However, ultimately, it doesn't result in any increased dynamic range, because when we then push up the highlights to the limit before clipping, although the darks are very well rendered if you look at the back of those chairs, when you look at that famous rectangle, you really don't see much left of the sky. So in effect, all that we're seeing here is that in a standard daylight situation, the GH5S Vlog, it isn't actually superior to the GH5 Mark II shooting in Cine D, and perhaps the rendition of Cine D is actually superior and easier to manage in post.